1. Eliza inherited her grandmother's antique mirror, a family heirloom with an unsettling past. At night, she began hearing whispers coming from it, soft, pleading voices asking for help. At first, she dismissed them as dreams until one night, her reflection moved on its own. It mimicked her in reverse, whispering, "Let me out." When she finally smashed the mirror, something crawled out of the shards. 2. Jacob had always felt like something was missing in his life. His mother avoided talking about his childhood, always looking uneasy when he mentioned feeling a presence in mirrors. One night, his bathroom mirror fogged over, revealing childlike handprints. Then he saw it, his identical twin, staring back at him, lips moving without sound. When he pressed his hand against the glass, his twin reached out and pulled him inside. 3. Sophie moved into an old apartment and found an ornate mirror left behind. She soon noticed her reflection was off. Subtle changes like blinking at the wrong time or wearing a different expression. One night, she caught it watching her as she slept, its grin too wide, its eyes too hungry. The next morning, she was gone, but her reflection remained. 4th, at an estate sale, Mark bought a beautiful mirror with a painting hidden beneath its glass. At night, the painting shifted. Figures moved, their faces melting into horrifying expressions of agony. One evening, Mark noticed a new figure in the painting. It was him. The next day, he vanished, his terrified face permanently etched into the mirror's surface. 5. A viral internet challenge dared people to stare into a mirror for 5 minutes without blinking. Most saw their reflection distort, a simple optical illusion, until Casey tried it. At the 5-minute mark, her reflection didn't just distort, it smiled at her, stepped forward, and pulled her into the darkness behind the glass. The next morning, something else was wearing her face. 6. Lucas worked night shifts at a high-rise office. Every evening, he noticed his reflection in the glass behaved normally until he was alone. Then it would move independently, watching him, sometimes whispering when he wasn't looking. One night, his reflection turned and walked away, out of sight. Seconds later, Lucas felt a tap on his shoulder. 7. David was washing his hands at a public restroom when he noticed something odd. The man in the mirror beside him had no reflection. When David glanced at the man directly, he was perfectly normal. But when he looked back at the mirror, the man's reflection had been replaced by something else entirely, something grinning with too many teeth. The man turned to him and whispered, "Now you see me." 8. Melissa had always been terrified of mirrors. Her therapist suggested exposure therapy, so she forced herself to look for longer periods. It worked, until she saw a stranger's face in the glass instead of her own. The more she looked, the more familiar the face became. Then one day, it wasn't in the mirror anymore. It was standing behind her. 9. At a local fair, Ethan wandered into the funhouse's hall of mirrors. He laughed at the distorted reflections until he saw one that wasn't warped. A perfect reflection of himself stood still, watching him. When he turned to leave, all the reflections moved, but his remained frozen, its eyes filled with silent terror. When he looked back one last time, his reflection was gone. 10th, Charlotte found an old, cracked mirror in her attic. Each night it showed her something horrifying, the last person to see her before they died. At first, she thought it was a strange trick of the glass until she recognized one of the faces, a co-worker who had died just days earlier. Then, one evening, she saw her own reflection, but she was screaming.